Okay, I think, let's see. I think I'm going to get started now. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm sharing my screen at the moment, and I am going to just start a little bit with my background. So, and I'm not really going to talk about like where I'm from or anything, because most people here know it. But I will start with the artwork that I've always liked. So I kind of thought that I could, please, if you can ask me questions, please go ahead at any time. But so the artwork I like. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a pretty, as most people know, my mom is a professional artist. She is an amazing artist. Her name is Paula Temple, if you're not aware. And my mom is also an art professor. My dad is Adrian Baron-Robbins, and he is an architect and a musician. So I was really kind of, I was always going to be, in the artistic realm. Not always, but I really, had that advantage for sure. I got to see a lot of art. I got to go to a lot of art galleries and museums. And one of the pieces that really spoke to me at an early kind of time period was Turner, JMW Turner. And he did this piece that I like to just sort of start off with, because for me, it was just wonderful, happy coincidence. So I love this piece of artwork. It's called Snowstorm, Steamboat off a harbor's mouth, making signals in shallow water and going by the lead. And the story behind this piece is that if you can see, there's like a little mast of the boat in the sort of middle to the right. So there's a boat in there, right? And the story is that Turner tied himself to the mast of this ship. And he tied himself there during a storm. So he's lashed to the mast of the ship, and he's watching this storm, and he's experiencing what it feels like to be in a storm on a boat in the ocean. And so when he gets back, of course, to his studio, he starts to paint the experience of being out there. And it comes out looking like this. And at the time, the critics were just like completely shocked by it, because it looked too abstract. It didn't really look like a cleaned up image of the landscape, right? And they couldn't figure out what it was, and they could barely see the boat and all this stuff. But what they missed is actually this was the most realistic depiction of the experience that he could have made, right? This is what it actually looked like. And that story really spoke to me, that feeling that you had to be inside of the experience of the artwork, right? So it happened that when I started to look into this during graduate school, I started to look into this painting a little bit more. I realized that the boat was named Ariel, which is actually a pretty common name for a boat, because Ariel comes from The Tempest, from Shakespeare's The Tempest. It's a very old name. It comes from before that too, in a couple of different traditions. So it was just like a great sort of like coincidence that the boat's name was Ariel. So another early sort of influence of mine was Richard Diebenkorn. And Diebenkorn did a lot of drawings, especially these, not so much as other paintings, that involved movement and sort of capturing the movement of the model, right? So as someone is sitting and moving around, he keeps drawing and erasing and drawing and erasing and drawing and erasing. This is very much how I've always drawn as well. And so that was an influence. Another influence was Willem de Kooning. So Willem de Kooning was an abstract expressionist, 1949. And this is another sort of all-over composition involving something that's very abstract, but also has bodies and forms within it that are sort of merged with the landscape. So this merging of figure and landscape was also important to me. So this is a very old piece, and it's not something that you might have ever seen if you are aware of me now, because I don't show that many old pieces of drawings. But I used to be a drawer. I used to be a drawer and a painter. In my Bachelor of Fine Arts, I earned it from, is Diebenkorn Scandinavian? Paula Temple, can you answer that? So this is, anyway, so this is from my undergraduate years at University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, where my mom was a college professor. And it's called Dancing Skeletons. And it was simply sort of me trying to kind of capture that movement and that feeling of the skeleton as it moves around, but in a very abstracted manner. So I'm really kind of playing around with how to combine these different influences. So this is one that when I got to graduate school, I kept on trying to sort of abstract my pieces and abstract my drawing styles and play around with drawing and erasing and drawing and erasing and drawing and erasing. So this is an old piece as well, mixed media. I'm not going to put too much time into these older pieces, but I do want to show people. You won't find these on my website. But this one's called Courtyard, and these are quite large. This is 131 inches long. So these were actually big, gigantic, physical pieces. I mean, I had to work on this outside in the courtyard. So I had to go outside in the courtyard and work on this piece that ended up resembling the wall that was around the courtyard. And I had to create it with my whole body, very abstract, expressionist-like. And so it was a very physically ambitious piece. I'm just going to go through some more. This one's called Cumulus. This is 96 inches. And let me just show you guys the size. I'm sorry about the poor quality. I spent some time trying to find another image, but this is the installation shot of my thesis exhibit. So these are very large pieces. They're made out of paper. And they're made out of accumulations of paper, actually. They're all made out of little paper scraps that I glued together. So, and there's spray paint and there's all sorts of stuff. And like Forrest said earlier, yeah, the palette is definitely something from JMW Turner. My palette has always been very muted and dark. And I'm not really sure exactly why that is, except for a really great artist named Elizabeth Condon one time told me that, the outfits you put on every day, as simple as it seems, like putting clothes onto yourself, when you put clothes on yourself, you make a choice, right? Even if it's a split-second choice about what colors that you're going to put on your body every day. And maybe that instinctual color choice should also inform the colors you use in your artwork. And I always have thought about that, and it is amazing how much of my artwork really does match the colors that I put on my body or feel comfortable with. So anyway, these are these pieces, and as you can see, there is on the left, there's a video monitor. So during graduate school, I started making videos, and never mind, it looks like it's going to play. Now these are going to be sort of right there. This is my first little snafu, but I have already queued up all of these, so I will be okay. There we go. So here is an old piece that I made called Plain Air. And I made this outdoors, and this was me really playing around with inside of my room, right? How do I actually get inside of it? So what I started to do is I started to set up a camera in my studio. And when I set up the camera in the studio, I realized that my body could be the mark, right? My body could be like a charcoal mark. It could be a paintbrush in a sense. It could be the paint stroke. It's not even, it could be both, right? It could be a paintbrush and it could be a paint stroke at the same time, using video. So I started making these videos of myself creating artwork But the artwork was always really distracting, like the artwork behind my body. So I started to try to eliminate the stuff behind my body so that my body could actually become the artwork. So I started to try to find frames. So this is me. I found this frame. This is in New York City where I spent the summer. And I found this frame that I could use. It was actually on the High Line when the High Line first started moving. And this is close to me here. So in about 2 seconds, you're going to see me look up to my right. And that's where the security guard picked me up. But anyway, but so I'm pretending, or not even pretending, I'm drawing what I see on this frame. Um, and in that way, I'm actually creating a landscape. So that's why it's called plein air, which is a term, a French term for a landscape artist who goes out into the real landscape. So this is another one that I did, very old, and I decided to dye my hair brown because I don't know, I think I was trying to be taken more seriously. But this is me. When I eliminated the piece behind me, I realized that all I was seeing was my shadow. So then I decided to try to actually capture my shadow with my drawing. At first, I actually tried to do it drawing with pieces of charcoal, but that also was distracting. So I ended up just drawing with white charcoal on a white piece of paper. And that way, all you're seeing is the figure reduced in the middle. So I was very interested in eliminating things just down to the essence, to the actual core of the piece. These are really short videos. I always made pretty short videos. This is actually probably my shortest video. It's 33 seconds. But this piece is the piece that I talked about, courtyard. This is me in courtyard, in the actual drawing, and being subsumed by it. So I'm taking the idea of me being inside of my artwork very literally. And I love this piece. I think it is one of my favorite pieces that I've ever done. So that's all of these video works kind of led to one to the other, right? One to the other, one to the other. So I had one idea that I would capture, and then that would lead to sort of like the next idea in the process. Let's see, make sure that I am on there. So another couple of pieces that I rarely ever show are these pieces. So this is covered in charcoal. These were the results of me trying to draw my shadow with the regular charcoal, but then it not really working out that well. So I decided to make artwork where I sort of dived into the work and then captured it with a photo instead of the video, because the video just didn't work out that well. So I created these pieces called covered in charcoal. This one's head first. This one is side. And then I printed it on this really beautiful paper called Hanamule paper. Hanamule. And I'm creating sort of these abstracted like moments using my body, but also just really focusing on the formal composition of the artwork. And so that's when I started to get into photography, right? So the drawing led into the video led into the photography, and now I would consider myself, you know, mainly making like digital photographs and videos. Here's a couple other pieces where I was just playing around with abstracting my body and also being inside of the artwork. And this is inside of paper because I always have really loved paper. So this is another piece. And then I showed you guys that. So then I had an opening reception with all these works. So I'm just going to show you some pieces that you can see sort of in situ, which means in here. So these are just another series of artwork where it's like photographs of me, but I'm sort of captured inside of the work. This was with Wendy McDarris and her McDarris Fine Art Gallery at the time. This is a piece called Hurricane Isaac. It was actually during Hurricane Isaac that I went out there and with a camera, was sort of performing in front of the camera, but it was so windy that it sort of captured this movement that I thought was very interesting. Another kind of series of these. So I really enjoyed being in wrapped and also in paper. So I did this period that I started to experiment with working, making pieces that were site specific, right? So site specific basically means that wherever they refer to the site, a very specific site. And for me, I like to make work that actually was in the site. So there was a faculty show that was at Florida Atlantic University where I was working. And the faculty show was actually to the left of the staircase. So my work was going to be shown in a room to the left of the staircase. So I decided to make a piece using the staircase. So here is the faculty show right here. You can see it was being projected there. So I did this piece inside the staircase, and that way when people saw it, and really never done any performance art. I don't know if I will in the future. But what I like about video is the fact that you can play with time. And you have those other elements, those four dimensions, right? So I can reverse it if I want. Anyway, this goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And alternate cuts that differently. So they go down and up. So that was shown right inside of the gallery. Right here is the installation shot, and it was shown alongside another photo that you might have seen if you ever got to my house. This big giant photo. It's 48 by 60 inches. I love having something that's really, really large. Admit these people. There we go. Okay, so let's see, moving on. I just wanted to keep this to like an hour because so I was really interested in pieces that were site specific, right? So then I did another piece. This is another projection. So this was projected on the outside of White Space, and White Space was a collection, or is a collection, in West Palm Beach. So there was a show there, and I created this, you know, and I knew where it was going to be projected. It was going to be projected on a wall that was right across from a lake. So I decided to use the lake as my landscape, right? And I went out there and I created this piece of artwork, and this was actually shown in the Mindy Solomon gallery. Here it is. This was shown in the Mindy Solomon gallery as part of a dance video festival, even though I'm not sure if it would qualify as dance, but I think I was part of their experimental program. Anyway, I'll just show a little bit of it. So this was created directly opposite of where it was projected. And it's very improvised. I do have a background in dance. I was a ballet dancer for a long time growing up. And so there is like definitely some ballet-ish moves that I've been, you know, just because I started when I was 3 years old in ballet, I kind of naturally have gotten into. So I'm really playing around more with time in this one, speeding up time, stuttering time, playing with fourth and video effect. I'm gonna go this is a long piece, probably like my longest piece almost. So I'm really now playing around with like the more technical aspects of video art and creating these like stutters. And actually, I mean, now that I'm looking at it, it kind of looks like a little bit of the shifts that I'm making at the moment. So that was white space. So then there was another piece that I got very excited about. I had another opportunity to show a piece in the windows on Lincoln Road. So the Art Center, I had a studio at Art Center for a while. If you guys want to ask any questions, by the way, I can see your comments because I have another computer going on right now. So I was going to be able to show a piece in this window that's on Lincoln Road. And I'm like, great, what am I going to do? Okay, I've done these 2 site-specific works before, so I'll do another one. So what I did was I went out to the window when there was no one around and there was nothing in the window. And I had a friend who sat with the camera and I kind of performed in the window. Now, I didn't want there to be anybody there because I don't actually like to do performances. I don't like people watching me work. I like to work solo. So I went out there at a very specific time thinking that there would be nobody there. So I went out about 5:30 in the morning in Lincoln Road. And here is the piece. This is a very, very long piece. Sorry about the quality. There's a better quality version. It actually was made with a 4K camera, so it was a really great quality version. And but so this was me just sort of hanging out in the window for about an hour. I could not see out that much. I could see very, very, very little bits out. And then I edited it down. So I'm just gonna go ahead a little bit. It's a long piece. And the nice thing that was about this artwork was that it was shown in the same window that it was displayed in. So when people were, you know, walking by and looking at the video, they would see the window and you would have this sort of like doubling, tripling, whatever you call it, effect. Now, the other interesting thing that happened was that people did walk by. There was a lot of people that actually walked by. And of course, I'm not finding them at the moment, but there were people that walked by and I managed to capture them. So while this is going, I'll show you guys. So here is a grid, is a large grid of stills from the video because I shot it in a nice like 4K thing. And so with the stills, I could actually capture the people that were walking by, which ended up being one of the most interesting parts of the entire video, was the people that were walking by during that time. And watching, basically, you know, watching me curiously. So it ended up kind of being a bit of a performance piece. So that was Art Center. And here is, there's the grid right there. So I made this large grid of photographs and then the video played right there. So moving on, so I kept on doing this sort of like semi-performative photograph, artwork, video, that sort of stuff. This is hill rolls, and this is another piece that actually you can see in my apartment if you ever come to my apartment. There's these 3 pieces that look like, you know, a path down a hill. And what you might not know about it if you see them is that I made the path down the hill. And I made the path down the hill with the side of my body. So I tried to figure out a way to draw on the landscape, right? I've been drawing inside the landscape. I've been framing my body. I've been doing all these different things to make myself physically the artwork. So how could I actually press a mark onto the landscape? So finally I figured I could just roll down the hill, right? And then if the hill has long enough grass, I will be able to press into it. So this is a piece that I made while I was at the Vermont Studio Center, and the Vermont Studio Center is an artist residency. So during the artist residency, I started to walk out into the environment and I found all of these hills with this long grass on it. And then I started to roll down them, videotape it, and really just sort of like intuitively try to make work that way. I'm wearing all white because I did a few different versions of these, and I realized you couldn't really see me unless I wore white. But I like the white because the white also distracts my body because it makes it almost like I'm a moving little dot instead of a person, right? So this is my favorite one because you can really see the line. It was also probably the most extreme one because the hill was very, very, very steep. And once I started, I couldn't control it. I really couldn't control it. I realized I always went down towards my head. My head was heavier, so my head would sort of guide the line as I fell. But once I got started, I couldn't stop whatsoever. It was very difficult to stop. And it was a really, I think, one of the more extreme pieces I did. It doesn't kind of look that extreme, but it ended up being a little extreme just because I couldn't see what I was rolling on, and I couldn't see if there was, you know, perhaps like a rock or something. So I wouldn't advise you to do it. I don't think it's a good idea to do it. But it personally, I think it's my most poetic work, and I really I'm proud of that piece of artwork. So moving on, I did do something different. So I started to get like a little, not tired, but burnt out of the in situ site-specific artwork. So I decided to do a piece with my parents. So the big interesting thing, I went to another artist residency the next year, and the artist residency just happened to be in my parents' hometown. So I went to the artist residency and I said to myself, I have two choices. I can either, number one, ignore that they're here and just make my artwork, right? Just make my artwork, ignore that they're here, you know, of course, like not ignore them, go to their house every night and, you know, and see them all day long, and that's gonna be wonderful. But, or I could have them participate in making my art, right? I could address the fact that they're there, right? I have these two people there that could help me. So what I did was I set up I'm an only child. I have two half brothers, but I was raised as an only child. And I'm an only child, and I thought, you know, we've always had this cohesive unit, you know, my mom, my dad, and me, this like triangle. So what would happen if we collectively made portraits of each other, right? So one person would come up with the idea of the portrait, one person would model for the portrait, and then one person would actually take the photo, like physically make the work. So there'd be like a physical, conceptual, and then subject matter. So that is what we did. So we created a series of pieces, and they're kind of round robin. And I have an actual key here. Let me see if I can find it. Relation key. There we go. Never mind, I'll find it later. But each of these pieces is made by a collective. So this piece is, of course, my father, Adrian Baron-Robbins. Whose idea was it? It was my mother's idea. And I know it's my mother's idea because it looks like her artwork. It looks like a watercolor. And then I shot it and also did some Photoshop with it. So all of these portraits are collectively made by three people. And in a way, the piece talks about how we see each other, right? So this piece, for example, it was my idea, and I was posing for it, and my mom was shooting it. We round robin the ideas. Anyway, I had a whole sheet. It was very complicated to set this up, but so I created this piece, and it was my mom. I wanted a reference to my mother, right? But I also wanted my mother to see that I had grown up. So the reference is the pigtails. My mom wears pigtails, and that's sort of her thing. And so I put my hair in pigtails, and then I pose, but I pose in this sort of like kind of mature way, and try to make myself look more adult. This is a piece that my mom created of my dad, and it's her idea. So I think I shot it. No, so I shot it, my dad posed, my mom created the idea. And she made a piano, right? So she made a piano out of ink. And then my dad sort of posed with his hands on it because he has amazing hands. You cannot take a bad photo of my father. Try. That should be my next project. Try to take a bad photo of my father. And then he plays on them. So there's a whole series of these. They were really fun to work on. You know, my mom would come up with these crazy ideas. This was her idea. And in a way, all three of us were very much reflected, especially with the concept, right? So this is my mom's concept. And this looks like her artwork. My mom uses these multiple figures in her artwork. So this is my dad's concept. My dad is not trained as a visual artist. He's a musician, he's an architect, right? So his ideas were always, they were really interesting though. I mean, they were actually really challenging. There was challenging things to pull off. So this is the way he wanted to see me. He wanted to see me as a runner, right? He wanted to see me as this like athlete, which is very fatherly, to be honest, you know? So it was a wonderful piece. I implore, everybody to check it out on my website. They're all on my website. Another piece that I think was a really interesting conceptual exercise. So let me go back to where I was. Okay, so speaking of, so next up, chronologically, I decided to continue to work with my mom, right? So my mom, Paula Temple, we decided to work on a piece together. And I was kind of struggling with ideas of what to do. So I decided to tell my mom to tell me what to do. So what we did is that every month I would come up with an idea for her, and then she would come up with an idea for me. They're totally different ideas. And then we would work on it for a month, and then we would exchange the pieces at the end, virtually, because my parents don't live in the United States. So we did this piece. I call it 12 mois, or 12 mois. My mom's going to kill me for that, but it's the French word for months, so 12 months. And these are two pieces that we worked on. And a lot of times, actually, the weird thing is that these two pieces, for example, were completely conceived differently, but came out looking very similarly. We did not share our work. So sometimes sometimes we actually shared the same idea. So this was a piece, I'll have to go to the actual Facebook. There's a great Facebook link here that you can check out all of these. But like this was a piece where I told my mom to recreate a painting that she had done a really long time ago. And she told me to recreate a painting or this collage that I did when I was 18 years old. And that has always hung in their house. So her artwork is to the right. It's a portrait of my dad. And that's when he was very, very young on the top right. And then I had done this sort of interesting piece on the top left. And it was kind of connected to my mom, actually, but it was sort of a personal piece, and it ended up being actually in Washington, D.C. So she redid hers. So she did another portrait of my father as an older man. And then I created this piece as a recreation. Let me see if I can go here. Oh. So I'm going to have to go to my Vimeo channel really quickly. This piece is actually pretty rare. I almost never show it. Let's see, I might have to go to the 12 mois page. I think it's going to take it too long because my computer's a little slow. So I'm on Vimeo. Oh, here it is. There you go. So it says March piece because I made it for the March month. It's another piece I never show.
It had lots of collage stuff on it. It had some little sparkle things.
So she's actually, this is a recording of a Skype call that I made with my parents, and they're describing the piece of artwork to me. that I'm supposed to recreate.
On the crown, it's kind of like a crown halo kind of thing, and it has some patches of colored cloth just stuck on it. And as soon as I find it, all our stuff over there, I will send it to you. I'll photograph it and send it to Wicker's office and stay there for about 2 years.
Oh,
it was sewn. It was a sewn.
There's my dad pitching it. I recorded them. I didn't tell them I was recording them, but I did tell them actually, like, move this way or do this. And then I recreated my piece of artwork using video instead. So this is a recreation of this piece right here, there and there. So that was a really fun, exciting sort of thing that we did. But yeah, so moving on, actually, I've done a couple more things, but I want to, have time for some sort of talking or questions about what I'm doing now. So what I'm doing now is I'm working with runners. I'm a runner, and I've been working with runners for a while. I mean, I've been running for a long time now, probably, oh gosh, maybe 7 years. And I was at a loss to what to do. And I said, okay, what should I do? I'm going to start working with runners and using myself as the model, which, as you've seen, I've used all along. So this is a rotoscope, which is a type of animation where you draw frame by frame over a video. And I am just doing frame by frame a piece of video that I got of me. And so this is, and then I sort of loop it and go over and over and over and over. So it's a drawing, it very much looks like my early drawings of those dancing skeletons. It's a reduction of the figure because it's just a figure on a white background. And I also really love shadows, as you can see, because of the trying to draw my own shadow piece. That was an earlier one as well. So I like to focus on these shadows kind of like melting towards the right and left, and the figures becoming more and more abstracted. Anyway, so this one is on my website, not as this group one. And then I also decided to start working, though, with groups. So so I started, just basically using runners. This is the newest kind of artwork. So this is the artwork I struggled talking about the most because it's so new that I haven't really shown it to anybody. And so it kind of, I'm at a loss for words. But this is right here. This is a piece I did actually of my running group. We meet at the track early on Tuesdays. So this is a piece called Wonder Woman, because the woman that is coming at us, the figure in the foreground, her nickname as a runner is Wonder Woman. So I made this piece, and again, it's capturing like Diebenkorn movement, multiple figures. It's a little bit bright for me. The colors actually still kind of make me uncomfortable looking at it, but I do, enjoy kind of how it's working out. Then I decided, here's another piece. Most of these are sort of videos, although I will probably be working on stills. This one is from an actual video I did not shoot. This is from a video of the finish line of a race that I did, and they send you this video that you can, that shows you crossing the finish line. So I decided to take that video and abstract it there, and I'm in the green hat right there. And so I decided to try to make the runners into like ink blobs, and abstract them. And I also was really interested in, when runners cross the finish line, they sort of put up their arms and kind of like a victory, like woohoo. And so I was looking at all these people sort of raising their arms up in this kind of victory, and how that was sort of an abstraction of the body, but also reducing the work in there. If you guys have questions, please let me know, because I know this is a little odd. So this is a piece. It took me a long time. The thing about these animations and these video pieces, they actually take so long for such a short amount of time, but I love the way they look, and I'm looking forward to one day having a big show with them. This thing drives me nuts. Okay, so that is another recent piece. As you can see, I don't have a lot of sound on my artwork. So that's something I have been struggling with and not really knowing exactly how to address. But this one, I do have sound on. And what I did, this is a local running group. And I like the idea of local running groups because a local running group is a combination of the most diverse group of people. They're only coming together because they want to run together for a brief moment of time, 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes. But they're so diverse. They're from every different background, every different profession and experiences. So I was interested conceptually in the running group. And then I was thinking about, as you run in a group, you sort of make these shapes, right? These shapes that sort of merge and unfold and separate. So in a very much like, like a lava lamp or something like the previous piece. So then I got interested in that and I was playing around with this other rotoscoping technique. And then I decided to record them and actually try to mess around with recording what they were talking about during these runs. So this is a piece with
like a little
Don't feel
what did you think? No,
I can get my
we could all like go there together.
sort of organic community.
Actually, yes, stop by shooting.
Like you ran over. I'm gonna miss it.
I used to run out here on my own, and then I saw them here one day, and I just thought, let me try running around. Such a great experience.
Yeah.
Like a different dimension, right? Like the social. So now I really look forward to it, and I started bringing my dog, and he looks forward to it too.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's good.
Yeah, it was good for you.
But this group specifically is really nice. So,
about all sorts of different things, and what I would like to do is have these in a gallery with a headset, so people could listen to them and maybe concentrate a little bit more, because they actually end up talking about, one guy's talking about how he likes to come with his dog, and then another person is talking about not being able to listen to radio in Cuba. And it's sort of like this weird combination of things that are completely like, I can't control what the conversation is. So that's another direction that my artwork is going in. So Paula Temple asked, do ideas start as abstract? Yeah, I mean, they start as, how can I make the last idea continue, right? So my last idea, this idea, like, for example, this is a very, this looks like a still photograph. It looks like a photograph that has a merging of figures and landscape. It's a experiential thing. It's something that, like I said, J.M.W. Turner, he tied himself to the mast of the ship. He experienced it. So for me, I think I need to be right there with the subject matter of the artwork. I need to be in it, right? And I'm actually in it with this run club. So that is important to me. So I don't know if my ideas start off as abstract. I think my ideas are basic concepts and sort of almost not rules, but roads that I tend to follow with all of my artwork. So I'm just going to show one more piece, and this is my latest piece, and it's not finished. And so just going to tell you it's not finished at all. But I've been working around with isolating my shadow from my figure while I'm running. And this doesn't have any sound yet. So this is a piece where I'm actually just cutting the shadow off of out of the landscape and off of my body. And then frame by frame, meticulously separating it from the piece. So the only part of the landscape you can see, the only part of the ground you can see is actually buried within the shadow. And then right here, I have it like on a grid. I'm not sure if I want to keep it on the grid, if I want to take it off the grid. But I'm hoping to have a much longer piece eventually. Anyway, so it's 1:47. I'm going to open it up for any sort of questions that I can try to answer. So please let me know if you have any kind of questions. Let me see if I can see my chat. And you can turn your mic on as well if you want to. Oh, wait, Anna Rosa, you're unmuted. I didn't mean to do that.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So is there any questions?
Don't have any questions. I have a